You might have heard of this mysterious hormone called oxytocin. Today we're going to talk about what it does and more specifically, what it does for your uterus and how to promote it during labor or to increase it. And once you understand it, it really helps you understand labor and what you can be doing, especially in early labor. I have seen people completely deplete their oxytocin, and I've seen people really help build it up. So I'm excited to give you guys the information that I have about oxytocin and our friend, the uterus. So first off, what the heck is oxytocin? It is a hormone that is made, I believe it is made in your hypothalamus, which is nearby your brain, and it is secreted in your body at multiple times. The most time that it is secreted is when you are in love. So in love with a boy, in love with your parents, in love with your siblings, and in love with this new baby. It is called the love hormone. And oftentimes it feels really good, right? Tell me down in the comments. Do you love it when you're in love? It feels so good. You know, when you had that first boyfriend in high school, there are so many good feelings. A lot of that is created by oxytocin, we believe. I mean, a lot of this is a little bit theoretical, but this is what we know about it so far. Now, that same hormone can influence this uterus to start to contract, but it is at much higher levels than you would have had floating in your body in junior high when you thought that Seth was just so cute. Now, when it influences your uterus, it starts to make it contract, which will push the baby into the birth canal and hopefully out. Oxytocin is believed to be one of the main hormones that causes labor, and that is what it is. And I will, at some point in time, the chemical makeup of oxytocin will be up here, but it is in no way important for you to know that. Receptors on your uterus notice it. You don't need to know it. Thank goodness. Me and biochem were never good friends. Now, I have a whole video on the 3 agreements that your body needs to make to go into labor. I'm going to link that video down below. But once your body has sort of decided, yes, now is the time, oxytocin is released into your bloodstream. So if you're later on in pregnancy or you sort of have prodromal labor every night, I have a whole video on prodromal labor. These are some things that you can do to maybe promote oxytocin, getting going in your system. In general, oxytocin is stimulated in labor in 2 ways. Editor Hillary here. I just wanted to say oxytocin is stimulated in many ways through our body. Today, I'm talking about ways that we can help it to stimulate it ourselves by doing things. But your body's making oxytocin all the time. And we're also going to talk some ways about not stopping it. So stay tuned. I just wanted to be clear that there's more than 2 ways that your body makes oxytocin. This is just something that you can do while you're at home. If you know what I mean. The first one is nipple stimulation. So it can just be rubbing the old bosoms, or you can use your breast pump if you already have one to see if that will induce anything. Now, all of this should be done under the guidance of your provider, but we do know that stimulating your nipples does increase oxytocin in your system. In fact, in labor and delivery, we have what's called a contraction stress test, and we have patients rub their nipples to make themselves contract. Now, contracting and going into labor are 2 entirely different things. We just know that when you stimulate that area of your body, it can make you contract. Now, some people can rub their nipples all day long and absolutely nothing will happen. And in those cases, we had to use medication to make it happen. But as you can imagine, stimulating your nipples is a lot easier than me putting in an IV. So most people picked that route. I actually don't see that much in the hospital anymore, but it can still be done to see how baby manages contractions. Now, the next one is intimacy with your partner or sex, and that can increase oxytocin in your body as well. Now, just like nipple stimulation, just because you have contractions doesn't mean that you're going into labor. Those are 2 separate and different things. Throughout your pregnancy, your uterus is likely going to contract here and there as just like a practice or just like I'm kind of ornery, we see sometimes. And so it's not unusual for you to have contractions, and that can be caused by these 2 different things. Now, nipple stimulation and sex can help to soften your cervix. I actually have a whole video on cervical prep, and I actually turned that into a podcast recently. So if you want to just listen in your ear holes, come join me on Pregnancy and Parenting Untangled, where we go through that podcast together, or you can find the link to the video down below as well. Now, sex actually has a few other unique ways, like depositing hormones close to your cervix, but just the act of loving your partner, even if you were to have nothing deposited in that area, it can still do things to help your cervix or increase the oxytocin. Now, there are other things you can do to increase your own oxytocin. And in general, it's just things that make you feel safe and happy. So it might be going out on a walk, watching a movie with somebody that you love, or just spending time with your family, even eating like good food. These are things that help that feel good love hormones go throughout your body. Now, in the opposite things that are painful or stressful will shut down oxytocin. When you don't feel safe, your body is going to be like, nope, we don't need to start labor right now. So when you do things that are painful, when you do things that are making you upset or stressed out, that's going to shut off those hormones. And I got to say, I see so many people like, I'm going to do jumping jacks to start labor. But in reality, because they absolutely hurt and are not any fun, that's clamping off those oxytocin things. They're going to be like, oh, no, we're not making any safe love hormones right now because we're doing jumping jacks. So I actually have a whole video on will jumping jacks put you into labor. I'll link that one down below as well. But you just got to remember, safe, happy, oxytocin. Stressed out, pain, shutting it off, no oxytocin. Now, in the hospital, we use something called Pitocin, which is the man-made synthetic version of oxytocin. If you were to look under it under a molecular microscope, I don't even know if you can do that because I, again, didn't do so great in chemistry, but they look exactly the same. To your body, these two things are exactly the same. Your uterus thinks Pitocin is exactly the same as oxytocin. Now, there is one difference that a lot of people mention, and that is that because oxytocin is made in your brain, it bathes your brain with those feel-good hormones versus me putting Pitocin into your IV. It actually cannot get to your brain because it doesn't go through the blood-brain barrier. So you don't always get those feel-good hormones. That being said, I think once oxytocin increases quite a bit, you don't get those feel-good hormones anymore. You might in the very early beginning phases of labor, but when you get into active labor, I think most people would agree Pitocin or oxytocin, the feel-good hormones have left the building. We just pushing a baby out right now. Now, Pitocin isn't the only way that we induce people. There are other ways of inducing people. I actually have lots of videos on induction. I'll link one down below. So how do I increase my Pitocin while I'm either at the hospital or I'm at home in early labor? One of the best ways is to maintain that connection with your partner. A lot of Pitocin is there to help bond us to partners, bond us to our baby. And so when you maintain that connection and your partner is involved in these times of labor, it can really help the oxytocin flow because that person hopefully makes you feel safe. So having a partner who has a clue what things are going on and can help you feel confident in both early labor and at the hospital is such a big win. I actually have a class that includes your partner that I recommend. I'm going to link that class down below for you. The next one is to stay relaxed. If you start to get nervous, you start to feel anxiety that this is happening and you're going to have a baby and you're not prepared for it at all, that's going to, again, shut off those oxytocin pumper outers. They are not going to do it anymore. So the more you can stay relaxed, the more you can feel confident, the more you can feel like, yeah, I know what's going on, the better these things are going to release. And I have 100% seen people who shut off their own oxytocin because they're just simply not prepared. And we don't get prepared naturally in the United States, especially. And so I do recommend that everyone take a birth class so they can feel confident and prepared when they're in the labor room. The birth class that I recommend is really going to help you bypass that running around like a chicken with your head cut off that you're freaking out that you're in labor. We don't need any of that. We need to be relaxed in this situation, which can be really hard. Now, in the hospital, this can look a little bit differently. Keeping the lights low so you don't have all the lights on you. Of course, we want all the lights on if we're putting an IV in, but once we leave after that initial assessment, let's turn the lights off or at least down. In the hospital, there's like 17 different lights that we can use in the room. So let your labor nurse know. I would love to have it a little bit more dim in here. Of course, we want a light on in case you need to get to the restroom or your nurse comes into the room. Nobody needs to be tripping in the dark, but keeping the lights low can help that oxytocin flow. You can feel a little bit more relaxed. Editor Hillary here. As I'm rewatching that, there's some people who really much prefer or they feel safer with all the lights on. So you just kind of have to decide who you are. And it's actually one of the things that I put on my birth plan, mostly because I want you to think about it in advance. Are you a person who likes all the lights on? Does that make you feel safer and happier? Or do you like dim lighting? That makes you feel safer and happier. And thinking through those things in advance can help out. My birth plan freebie, I'll link it down below for you guys too. Unnecessary alarms like the blood pressure cuff going off. Make sure that you're able to cancel those different things or have them fixed. Shutting the door, having the curtain pulled so that you feel a little bit more privacy in your room. Limit how many people are in the room. This may not be a time that you want your mom in the room with you, especially during early labor or where you're just trying to labor and cope with things on your own. Maybe delay all those extra people in your room for a little bit if you're okay with that. And finally, you might want to limit painful procedures. A lot of people come into labor and delivery. We check your cervix. I do think that that is very important. I do think it's very important to have coping skills while we check your cervix. I actually have a whole video on what to do if you find it painful. I'll link that one down below. But managing the pain, limiting painful things that aren't as necessary can be really helpful in these situations. But also having breathing techniques that allow you to maintain being relaxed while these painful but necessary things are going on. Take a birth class that both discusses interventions and things like that, but also teaches you natural pain management techniques like breathing, massage, other things that you can do. The birth class that I recommend does just that. And again, I'll link it down below. But all of those things are going to help you promote oxytocin during your labor. Now, oxytocin is turned on by those 3 agreements that your body makes to put you into labor. I'm going to link that video up above and down below because it's important to understand that those things need to happen before the oxytocin flows. Thanks for joining us here at the Pregnancy Nurse, where we get you prepared, not scared, for your upcoming hospital birth.